In this video, I will be mixing this project here in GarageBand. And why is this special? Well, this is a project that was sent to me by one of my viewers right here on Studio Live today. So let's go. Hi, my name is Pete, and this is Studio Live today, where my goal is to help you create, record, and release your best music. And as I mentioned, this is pretty special because one of my patrons over on patreon.com, Steve, sent me a song and said, Pete, would you mind listening to this song? I've put it together in GarageBand. I'm sort of learning as I go. Can you take a listen? I took a listen and went, that's a pretty cool song. And then I said, do you mind sending me the project? I'd love to see how you put it together. He sent me the project file, and then I said, hey, Steve, I would love to actually use this in a demonstration because it's one thing to mix your own music. I think it'll be cool for me to mix someone else's tunes, but more to the point, I think this can add value to both Steve and maybe some others out there of you who are actually starting out in GarageBand. And you maybe just want a few tips and tricks and ideas around how to mix guitars, how to mix vocals, how to mix drums, and how to get your song sounding the best it can. So this is a rock song, as you heard in the opening there. It's using guitar loops here. We've got some virtual drummer, we've got some virtual instruments, and then we've got some synths and some male and female vocals. So there's a lot going on in this. So this is going to be a pretty intense video. So for that reason, down in the description, I've added in some little markers there so that you can jump around. So if you're really interested in guitars, you can jump to the guitar section. Want to learn about vocal mixing, jump to vocals, and all of the different sections will be down there in the description. And the cool thing about this is that anyone can actually create a track like this in GarageBand, because what Steve's used here are some loops here, he's used some synths, he's used his own voice, and that is something that's available to everyone. You don't even need a lot of gear to get started. You can literally use the built-in mic on your iPhone or your iPad. So that's enough talking, Pete. We want to see what this is. So a big thank you to Steve. Thank you for being brave and providing your mix. Now let's jump in, take a listen, and see what we can do to make this mix really pop. Let's talk about setting up to mix a song. So the first thing I like to do is to actually get my tracks named and in order so that I just get a bit of organization. I like to have things neat and tidy. So you can see here we've got drum tracks, bass, a bunch of guitars, another drum track here. We've then got a synth here and here, another guitar here, more synths. And this is what happens when you're building out a song. This is totally normal. My songs look like this too. But what I like to do before I get started mixing is to reorder this. So I've actually gone away and I've put together a track template for this already. So what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm going to rename each one of these tracks. Now to rename a track, all we need to do is actually tap right there on, actually I'll use my mouse, tap right there on the actual icon, and then we go to rename, and then we can actually type in, and I'll just grab my keyboard and type in a new name. See, I knew I'd forgotten something. Here's my keyboard. I'm just going to type in drums because this literally is just the drum track. But then as we go through here, so what I'll do is we'll tap on this one, we'll tap again. We're going to carefully tap and tap rename. And then instead of Liverpool, which doesn't mean much, it's a Liverpool bass, we're just going to put here bass. And we're going to continue on doing all of these. And you'll see when I come back some of my naming conventions, which will actually tell me how we can actually note these different instruments and what parts of the songs they'll actually be playing in. Alright, so I've renamed all of the tracks here, and the naming conventions don't really matter, but whatever works for you. I've named all of my different guitar parts here, and I've also put in here, you'll notice here that I've put whether they're in the bridge, the end, a part, and this will just help remind me, because once you have more than about 4 or 5 tracks, it's really hard to remember what all of them are. So the next thing that I'm going to tackle is track order. So what I like to do is bring any instrument that's one of the main instruments that's driving the song up towards the top, and especially if it's throughout the whole song. So the one especially that I want to bring up is our lead vocal. So I'm going to tap and drag the lead vocal, drag this one all the way up here to the top. What I'll probably do is I'll have my drum and bass, and then I'll put all the vocals directly underneath there, then all the guitars, and then all the synths and other instruments after that. So let's now bring up the vocals. So we've got the backing vocal here, which is the vocal for the bridge. So we'll bring the backing vocal for the bridge up to here under that one, and we'll then grab the other backing vocals. So there's 2 more backing vocals here for the bridge. We will drag those ones, and yes, you might think, Pete, this is a painful process. Like, why would you do this? I'm promising you that once you actually get to the mixing process, this is actually going to really help you out. However, you don't need to watch me do all of this, so I'll finish this off and then come on back. So that is all done. Now, before I show you what I've done here, I'm going to tap in the top left corner here to go back and save my project. If you've seen some of my other mixing videos, I didn't save one time and lost about half an hour's worth of mixing. So I won't make that mistake again. So there you go. It has updated there. Now, what I'll actually do while I'm here is I'm going to make a duplicate of this so that I can keep the original one here and then have my mix. So I'm going to tap on select. I'm going to tap on the one here. I'm going to tap on duplicate, and it's going to duplicate me out a copy. And then I can just tap in here to rename this, and we'll call this Chase the Rain. Oops, where's the right keyboard? I've put the keyboard away. One moment. Too many things here going everywhere. All right, I'm going to call this Chase the Rain Final, and I'm going to put PJ Mix. And that way I'll know this is my mix. So I'm going to hit done. And now what we'll do is we'll reopen this mix, and we'll tap on that one, load up my mix of the project here. And then we can get started. Now, yes, I know that was the admin side. Not a lot of folks love the admin, but it will help me out because here's what we've got now. We've got our drums at the top. So we have 3 different drum tracks. We've got drummer all the way through. We've got some additional beats here in some parts, and then we've got our additional drums there. We've got bass here, and then we've got all of our vocals. So we've got our lead vocal there. We've got all of our backing vocals. In fact, let's bring our other lead here that happens right at the end. Let's just bring that to keep all of our lead vocals together, because we've got a change in the lead vocal there towards the end, just around the effects. There's all of our bridge vocals in the middle there, you can see. And then we've got all these guitars, these rockin' guitar loops. And these are all the GarageBand guitar loops that Steve has used to perfection here. Mwah. I love the work that he's done with these guitar loops. Sometimes it's challenging to make guitar loops sound good. He's done a good job in this one. So we've got all the different guitars, and then we've got our synth instruments down the bottom. So we are now ready to do the fun stuff and start our mix. Now, there's 2 ways I could go here. I could go faders down, which means I'm just going to put all the faders down and then mix everything back in to get the right levels, or I can start tweaking the mix. Let's start with the tweak way, just because I think Steve's already done a lot of the hard work here for me. So what I'm going to do is we're going to jump into a part where we know the most is going on here. So let's find where all our guitars are rocking out and our vocals are rocking out. And we'll take a listen here and just get a feel for what's poking out, what might need to come up, come down in the mix. So we'll hit play, turn up our volume. So I'm taking a listen to this. The things that I'm hearing so far is that the vocals need to come up, in my view. So I think Steve's nice gravelly vocals that's really in the mix there, that needs to cut through. Now, I mix vocals too loud, so I need to be very careful, especially in headphones, that I don't end up mixing these too loud. You've got to call me on it if I do mix them too loud. So that's probably the first thing that I'll do, is bring up the vocal sound. But everything in general is a little bit loud on here. So I'm going to... I think the mix is kind of right, but I think if you look at the meter at the top here, things are kind of peaking and pushing a bit hard. So I'm going to use my favorite trick here. I'm going to use my FX trick to help me get a static mix. So I'm going to tap on FX up in the top left here. I'm just going to hit record. Don't want excuses, there's only... And just do something like that. We don't actually need to keep this FX, but now we have, right down the bottom here, we have this FX track. Now, I'll come in here, and we're going to delete out this, tap it, tap again, tap on delete, and why did that not work? Delete, see ya. All right, but now we have this effects track that we actually are going to be able to tap on our mixer up the top here, and we can go into our visual EQ, and we can actually make some changes here. So what I'm going to do is grab the volume knob here. Oh, it looks like there was already some EQ there. I wonder if Steve had already come in here and turned the treble up a little bit and the bass down a little bit. It didn't carry across if he did, which is weird. I'm just going to flatten it out for now, and I'm going to drop this down about 5 dB, I think, around about there. And then if we come again to this louder section that we were just playing, we'll turn off the FX thing there. We'll go back to there. We'll hit play. One excuse says there's only illusions. This world is now gone way beyond insane. The world is crying. So yeah, it's just at a better volume for mixing, because remember, we want to leave some space for a mastering, and we want to be able to make sure that we're not too loud on all of our instruments. So I'm not going to do a faders down here because it would take a bit too long, and I have done a previous video of faders down mixing, which I'll link somewhere up around there that you can check out. But what I am going to do is let's address the vocals in particular. I want to make sure that they are sitting in the mix. So it may be volume, but more likely what we'll need is a bit of compression here. Now, this is where Steve has been super brave, because I'm going to hit the solo button on Steve's vocals here, and we're going to play back and see what we need to do with these. So we'll hit solo and we'll hit play.
Don't want excuses, there's only ruses. This world is now gone way beyond insane.
Really cool, gravelly vocal, really passionate. And this is one of the things that Steve has done really well. He sent me the original version of this song, and I said to him, Steve, I think you're singing within yourself here. I think you can really like blast out these vocals, and they're going to sound amazing if you really just put it in, give it 100%. So the next version he sent me sounded like this, and it's really, really cool. However, the one thing I think we need to do is to level these out. So we could use automation, we could ride the volume up and down, but I think compression is going to probably do it for us here. So what I'm going to do is come to here. Now, I could just turn the volume up. So let's just bring it back in the mix, and I'll show you what would happen if we just brought the volume up here. We'll hit play.
Turn on my TV now and look what I see. There's media puppets and a lion of me. Politicians tell.
So it's pretty good, but the problem is that it's a little bit varying, and this is the problem that I have, everyone has when you're recording vocals, is it's not always going to be at a really consistent volume, because especially if you're getting into it, your head's moving, you're moving around the microphone. If you're using an internal microphone, it's even harder to keep that consistent. So let's have a look at compression. We'll tap on the mixer icon here, we'll go into plugins and EQ, and then we'll go to the compressor here. So the threshold here is what we're going to want to start dialing down. You can see we've got some massive compression on here, so I'll probably bring the ratio down a little bit, maybe around sort of 7 to 1-ish, which is still pretty heavy compression. It's a rock song. We can go hard. We'll leave the attack around 6, maybe even a little bit faster on the attack, just to hit it a bit harder early on. And we'll just level that gain out to 0, shall we? All right, let's hit play on this one, and we'll dial the volume down, and then we'll play with this compression and see what we can do to get these vocals back in the mix.
Look what I see. There's me, a puppet and a lion of me. Politicians tell me such a just war. The young kids are dying now, and what the hell for?
So that's getting closer to what we want there. We'll turn the volume down a little bit here. You can see that we're still getting the volume through, but it's actually what compression is doing is it's raising up the volume with makeup gain, but it's squashing the peaks down. So instead of it being really up and down, we're removing some of that dynamic range to make a more consistent overall volume. So we'll continue playing in this second part here. In fact, let's move a little bit further down into another section here and just see how this is sounding.
One excuse says there's only ruses. This world is now gone way beyond insane. The world is crying, it's slowly dying. Our sanity's been flushed right down the drain.
Okay, I think that's pretty good for a static mix for now. So is there anything else popping out to us? Well, you can provide some comments here too as well. So if you're watching along and you're saying, yeah, the drums need to come up. I think the drums do need to come up a little bit here. So let's come back a bit, and we'll come back to the start of that section, and we'll hit play.
Don't want excuses, there's only ruses. This world is now gone way beyond insane. The world is...
And maybe we've got a little bit high on those vocals. So we'll come back to the vocals, and we'll just dial the compression a little bit down, like we can do. Maybe down to about here.
Crying, slowly dying. Our sanity's been...
Yeah, so it's definitely better. So that's definitely the tip for this one. With your static mix, don't be afraid to get your compressor involved here, because yes, you want to get your volumes right, but you also want to play around with a little bit of compression in there as well. What about these guitars? Are these sounding like they're... We'll go right to the start here, because we want to make sure this guitar really kicks in at the start here. Yeah, not bad, but you know what? What I would probably do straight away is I'm just going to grab this loop, and I'm actually going to use some clip gain here, which is a pretty cool technique. So before our other guitar kicks in here, I'm going to tap on this one. I'm going to go to settings, and let's just bring this up. Maybe, let's be a bit aggressive to start with. Go about 5 dB, hit done, and let's just play this again now. So it's just driving through a little bit there, and then when it gets into our other instruments coming in, it won't be quite as aggressive here.
Turn on my TV now and look what I see. There's me.
All right, let's just while we've got these three guitars playing here, let's bring them together and just make sure that our guitars are balanced here in the mix. We'll hit play on these. Yeah, that's sounding pretty cool. What about when these heavy riffs come in here? We'll listen to these here. Yeah, that's cool. I'm happy with that. So I think the static mix is getting pretty close here, and we'll move on from here because we've got a lot to cover in a shortish period of time. So let's move on. What I'm going to do now is a little bit of editing and cleaning up of these tracks, ready to start doing cool things like panning and adding effects into our track. Okay, what is editing all about? Well, what we want to do with the editing process is clean up any parts of any audio recorded tracks that we don't need and basically just hone down and carve down our tracks to whatever we want to actually be in the final mix. So things like vocals that we have here, what you'll notice if we zoom in on this one, that there's a lot of space here at the start before the vocals actually kick in. So what I like to do is remove a lot of that. So we can actually just grab and drag this carefully. Now you don't want it to be right there because that's going to cut off your first word, but we want it to be just before there so that we don't have any of this. This is just going to be Steve there waiting to sing. And then we're actually going to do this in all of our different sections here. So we're going to tap here and split. We'll split that out. Now, you don't have to go fanatical with this because, let's be honest, it's not a very fun process. But definitely where you see these big blank spaces, we can get rid of these by just clipping them out because you just don't want to have a bunch of background noise of you waiting around to sing. It can actually come out of there. So we'll just remove this last bit. You can understand the process that we're using here now. Come down to the end, this one here. So I will go away and do a little bit more tidying up and come back and just show you if there's any other interesting things that I need to do before we get into the mixing process. All right, I made a bit of a rookie mistake there and I wasn't going to show you, but it'll actually help. What I had is I actually had a bunch of these actually selected. So you can select more than one item at once. And here was the problem. I was doing things like this. I had a bunch selected, and when you do this, look what happens. It cuts off the start and the end of all of them. So we'll hit undo up the top there, this button up here, and I'm just going to start that again because, yeah, I cut off a bunch of the vocals. Okay, there's our edited vocals now. I'm happy with that. I haven't gone nuts with this. We can do some more later, and I didn't want to wait around while I did all of this. So now we can go in here and start looking at some other options that we have for editing here. So what I'll generally do is look through all the tracks and see, do we need them all? Are there any duplicates or anything that is muted out or no longer used? And a couple of things I've noticed here, if we come on down, so we've got, in the bridge here, we've got the same vocal line, and it's been duplicated out twice. Now, this is something that is really hard to get your head around early on, and that is that if you want to get, say, a stereo effect, and you have two of the same thing, the idea in your head is going to be that what you want to do is come in here and mix one over to the left, one over to the right, and it's going to widen that sound out. But what it actually does is it just doubles the sound, because think about panning, it's just how much volume there is on the left channel, and how much volume's in the right channel. So if you have the same sound and you put the same level of volume in each channel, it's just going to sit in the center. And it doesn't matter how wide you pan those two things out unless they're a different recording. So if you recorded the same vocal line twice, the variation on the left and the right is what's going to create that stereo space. The other thing you can do, don't recommend it, but you can delay it. So let's, I'll actually show you this. It'll be easier if I actually give you a practical demonstration. So if we come in here, if we just put these panning here, we'll pan one hard right and we'll pan the other one hard to the left. And if we hit play on this part, so this is Steve's backing vocals for, and they're recorded quite low, so we can't see the waveform. So we'll hit play on these.
We're chasing.
Which is cool. I like the chorus sound. I like it being there. The thing is that if I did this, if we put the panning in the center for both of these, it's going to sound exactly the same. Let's just play that again.
Chasing.
So it doesn't actually change the panning. Now, what you can do, the thing that some people do if you wanted to create this without singing it twice, is if you come right in here, if we zoom right in, let's just bring that across so we can see what we're doing. If we zoom all the way in, what you can do is just grab one of these and move it by a tiny amount, like, about that much. And then, now if we take a listen to this, and we'll pan them. So we'll pan it out to the left there, the right there. Now if we play, actually we'll find where the vocal actually is, which is down here, I believe.
We're chasing.
So now you can hear that we do actually have that stereo separation because one is playing slightly before the other. Now, I don't recommend this for a lot, but it actually sounded okay with this vocal, so I may actually leave that in there as a bit of a demonstration. But what I'd suggest is you can either use this method or just re-record that vocal again. But if you just have two things and they're the exact same vocal, they're not going to give you any stereo separation. So just wanted to point that out there. Again, Steve, this is something that I did for probably 3 years before I even realized it. And I know many of you have done this, are still doing this, and think, oh, they get to stereo width. And then if you actually go back and listen, it doesn't actually give you any stereo width at all. Let's move on now. We're taking a look at panning now. So we want to actually get into the real panning and find out where we want all of these instruments to sit in our mix. So we're about to talk panning, but before we do, we'll tap in the top left corner to save out our project. Now, I like to use a bit of a manual sort of version control here. So I'm going to tap select. I'm going to tap my PJ mix here. I'll use my mouse so you can see. I'm going to tap my duplicate button, and that's going to duplicate it out. And now you can see here it's called PJ Mix 2. So this will be a snapshot in time of what we've done so far. And from here will be our panning onwards. So if I completely mess up this panning, we know that we can go back to Mix 1 and everything will be exactly as it was. So we'll tap here on Mix 2. And come back in here. Now, when we're talking panning, what we're wanting to do here is get balance. So balance between the left channel and the right channel. So as we've done down here, and we'll use this as the first example, not down there, with our vocals here. Yeah, I like the idea that Steve was thinking about panning these out wide. And in fact, he had them sort of panned in a little bit. I would go a little bit more extreme with that. Let's bring them all the way, as we did, to the left and the right, because I kind of like having things panned way out west. So we'll just come and play a little bit of this towards the end here. And because we've got that little minor delay trick there.
Stop. Keep chasing. It's nothing.
It puts it right out there, and it's going to actually add to the texture of this as we go through. So that's the first thing that we want to do there is some panning. Let's just give ourselves a little bit more room here. And we've done that prematurely because we need to bring these back. So let's talk guitars, because the guitars are kind of driving this track, yeah? So we're going to come down here and take a look at the guitars. Now, we have this rockin' guitar here at the start, and it's the only instrument. Now, what I actually want to do with these is I want to put this guitar on the left and this guitar on the right, because these two complement each other nicely, but we want to sort of separate them out. So if we hit play here. So they're sounding good, but what I would actually like is for this one here to be panned hard left and this one here to be panned hard right, because if we listen to these now, you can just really get that sense of stereo width from these. Now, this is not necessity. You don't have to do this, but it's something that I like to do, is to get those guitars wide, especially in a track like this where we've got a bunch of guitars. Because what we have down here is we have these heavy, distorted guitars that are going to kick in this section here. Now, once again, we've got the same thing here where we've got a duplicate of that second one. So what we'd want to do is, again, we want to use that little delay trick if we want to. But what we can do is we can actually just use a plugin to give it a bit more width. So we could use a flanger or something like that if we wanted to give this some more width. But I don't think we need both of these. I'm actually going to make an executive call here, and I'm going to delete the second track here. Sorry, Steve, but I'm going to make some calls. And if you don't like them, you know what? You can use the original. You can use some of these suggestions. None of them. It's all good, because mixing, I should have said this right at the start, mixing is all about what sounds good, what you want your track to be, and what's going to be the best for the track in the end. There is no right, there is no wrong. There's just things and guidelines and things you can try, trial and error, and whatever works, works. If it sounds good, it is good. That's my view anyway. So we're all good here. Yeah, so we want these guitars here. Let's see where we're going to pan the rest of the guitars. So we've got this heavy guitar now. Do we want to let's just put that down the middle for now. I don't mind that being down the middle because it's kind of like a bit of a bassy guitar anyway. So we listen to these three together. Yeah, so it's just adding to that chunk, 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 which is sort of just going to drive along with the bass there along there. Let's take a listen to these guitar stabs that we have in this section here and see where they're sitting. So not bad in the middle there. Oh, actually, no, they're not in the middle. Here they are. Yeah, they are down there. They are there in the middle. So what I'm going to do, though, is because in different sections we have this pick scratch coming in here, I'm going to use a pan. I'm going to put these a little bit left, so half the way left, and I'm going to put these pick scratch, which are already on the right. There you go. So I'm going to put these over here on the right so that when everything's coming together here, and what you can do, like, don't use your eyes to mix, use your ears. But if you look at this up the top, you can actually see the ratio of the left to the right, kind of. So if we hit play on this, it is a little bit left heavy. So maybe we experiment with this. Maybe what we do is this part here, the heavy parts that we bring in, maybe we switch these around. So to get a bit more balance, maybe this goes over this side, and maybe the stabs come over to the right so that we get more on the right-hand side. Let's take a look and a listen and see if this sounds better now. That sounds a little bit more balanced to me. So yeah, again, it's all just judgment calls and decisions here. So that's some panning tips for our guitars there. Now the one more thing, while we're talking guitars, I wasn't going to do this till later, but while we're talking panning and guitars, I'll give you a quick guitar tip here, and that is what I like to do with EQ, which is to use some complementary EQ on our guitar. So I've got the two guitars here. What I like to do is tap on my plugins and EQ here, go into Visual EQ, and find a frequency that, and this is something that's been done by a lot of other folks. It's definitely not my own invention, but we want to boost a frequency somewhere here that's going to sound good on one side, and then maybe cut in that same frequency. So what we want to do, we want to solo one of these guitars and take a listen to this one. This is over on our left, and this is sort of our heavier, lower kind of guitar. So we're going to go into our EQ. We probably want to cut it about there to give it a little bit of a darker kind of sound. And then again, to complement, let's come into this guitar here, and what we'll do, we'll tap, we'll go to, wrong spot, we'll go to Virtual EQ. And we'll do the same thing, but we'll just give it a little bit of a boost here. So if we might even give it a little shelf. You don't want it sort of to go nuts like that, but so there you go. That, I think, will work nicely together. We bring these two guitars back together now. Yeah, they've just got a little bit more flavour and they're sitting on both of those sides. So that's a cool way to get, again, to complement those two guitars. And even if you're using guitar loops like this, hey, they're samples of guitars. So they're going to sound good if you use some of the same techniques you use on an actual real guitar track that's not recorded like a loop as these ones are here. Let's take a quick reality check here on how we're going, because what we've done is we've jumped around a little bit. We've looked at some mixing, we've looked at some editing, we've looked at some panning, we've looked at some guitar tricks in here, and we've cleaned up some of these tracks. Let's just make sure that we haven't made it sound a whole heap worse. So we'll come into a section here and we will hit play.
Head on for meltdown, it's easy to see. Our leader's gone crazy and he's holding the key.
So yeah, now that we've played with a lot of those instruments, our vocals are too loud. So we can bring these down a few dB, and we'll come into another section here.
Beyond insane, the world is crying, slowly dying. Our sanity's been flushed right down the drain. Where you can strike first if you dare, then we're all gonna taste that acid rain.
So I can see now why Steve put the main guitar down the middle, because in sections like that, it doesn't sound super good because it's kind of leaning a little bit more to the right, to the left-hand side. Let's just check. Yeah, here's the problem. So we do need to bring this guitar over to the right because this is the one that's playing with our left guitar. And then our stabs are going to have to be over here on the left, but maybe the stabs just go down a little bit in volume so that we can just level this out. What have we got? Yeah, we've got left there, right there. We've got that over on the right. We've got the stabs to the left. And then maybe our scratches we just put back down the middle. You can go a bit too far with, with the panning, which I've kind of done here. We'll hit play again.
Turn on my TV now and what do I see? Political leaders, it's the lion of me. Rejoice in your victory, now it's time to rebel. We don't give a damn about the world we just killed. Ha!
I actually don't mind that. I think it sounds, the pick scrapes I probably need to turn down a little bit again. But yeah, I like that it's got a little bit more flavour and it's moving around a little bit in the space. And once we play a bit more with some effects on the vocals, which we're going to jump into now, then we should be able to get ourselves a pretty cool sound. Welcome back, although you didn't go anywhere, but I did. It's a day later, that's why I'm wearing a different shirt, and it's actually not a bad thing because when you're mixing, sometimes going away from the mix and then coming back to it, you can hear different things. You get a little bit sort of blind, or the audio equivalent of blind, deaf, I guess, of the mix, and sometimes your mixes can suffer because of it. So let's jump back into the mix here and hit play and just see where we're at now.
One excuse says there's only bruises. This world is now gone way beyond insane.
I've just put the vocals down a little bit, yes, because I was listening to this over the last day and I'm like, I'm still mixing my vocals too loud. So again, let me know in the comments if they're still too loud, because at the end of this, I'll be playing the whole thing for you. So what do we want to do now? Well, we've got our static mix down. We've got our panning where I think I really like it. We're going to start tackling some of the other things. So we have a bridge in here that we haven't really played around with. We're going to jump into that and add some effects to that first. And then we'll come back to the song as a whole and look at our reverb, our delay, and those sort of things. So let's come into this bridge because this is a cool little change up here. I don't know if I've played much of this so far, but let's just take a listen to how the song changes coming here into the bridge. So in this part, we've got the female vocals. So we've got Steve's wife who's added some vocals here, and then we've got Steve adding these duplicated vocals, which we did take a bit of a listen to last time around. So what I want to do with these, let's zoom in on this vocal a little bit. I'm going to use a technique that I've showed before, which is where we want to add delay, but just to the first word of each phrase. So this will take us a little bit of setting up, but it's a cool trick and it's worth us doing. So we're going to tap on this one. We're going to go duplicate to get the same track here. We're going to tap on this one, we're going to go copy, and then we're going to line this up here. We're going to line it up right at the exact same start point here so that we can get the vocal in the same spot, like that, paste it in, and there we go. Now what we actually want is we just want to cut this down a little bit. So we want this first word here, which is just the chase, we want that to be cut out. And we can do it like that. So we just need to tap. We need to tap again and split this off. And if we just play these back at the moment as they sound. Okay, so what we want is we want the chase and we want the rain. So as we zoom in here, what we can do is we can line this up here and find the spot where we want it. Yes, you need to be a little bit precise with your movements like that. And then we'll tap again, and we'll split this out like so. We'll remove this middle part, so we'll delete that. because what we actually want is we just want the delay to be on this. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to tap on this one. No, we're not. We're going to tap on the mixer icon here in the top right corner, top left corner. Doing well today, aren't I? Clearly. We're going to go to plugins and EQ. And this time, what we're going to do is we're going to edit this one out. So we'll just take off a lot of these that we already had here. We'll take off the tape delay there, and we'll leave the stereo delay there, but we're going to add in some track delay here. So we're going to come into the track echo, and what we'll do, we'll hit our edit here, and we'll put the track echo right down here at the bottom, so it's the last thing that goes on, and then we're going to put it up to 100% wet, and then 0% dry. And then what we want to do, so we want this to be a quarter note delay, so let's just see what it sounds like. We'll solo these two in here, and we'll hit the play button on this one.
Chase the rain.
There you go. And what you can hear there is that we don't want that the rain, we just want the rain. So again, we'll zoom in over here, we'll cut this a little bit more precisely. And if we move in, again, you've got to zoom right in so that you can get to exactly the spot. If you keep zooming, see at the top there, it says snap to grid off. That means we can now have complete free movement. So when you're doing something like this, that's a good option. We'll tap on that, we'll split it, we'll tap it, we'll tap it carefully, and then we'll tap it, and then we'll delete it. So now, let's take a listen to the effect that we have here now. If we hit play.
Chase the rain.
And individually, it might not sound fabulous. In fact, we probably need to take the stereo delay off this second one. And now we can actually work out how much of this delay we want. So the repeats, we want it to repeat a bit more. Let's just flatten out the color there. In fact, we might make it a little bit up there. And now if we bring this back in the mix, take a listen to how this is going to sound now. Hit play. So we need to turn it down a little bit again so that we get the right sort of sound there. We'll bring it back again, play it one more time. So you can hear there that when we don't have that cut bit, it's not going to sound great. So I'm going to go through and finish doing all of these so that it's going to sound really cool all the way through, and then we'll return and we'll take a listen, and then we'll start working on the rest of the effects on this track. Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit. I've only done the cuts in the first part because the rest of it actually sounds okay once the rest of the song builds in, and yes, I'm being a bit lazy and running out of time. What I'm going to do though is I want to experiment with some more effects on this vocal here. So we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to remove the Effect EQ because that doesn't seem to do much. So I'll grab my mouse and show you here. And I'm going to add in a bit of an interesting one. I'm going to add in either a flange or a microphaser. I might go the microphaser just so that it's a little bit sort of less intense in the sound. Now we'll go to Edit. We'll move this down. Actually, should we have it? No, we'll put it before the delay. We'll put it in here, and we'll hit done. Now if we come in here to the microphaser, let's take a listen to what this is going to sound like on the vocal by default.
Chase the rain.
I actually kind of like that because it's just moving it across the left and right spectrum. If we bring this back into our mix, let's take a listen. I think that's kind of cool. I'm going to go with it for now. We can come back and re-explore it towards the end. But that's just an idea of the sort of experimenting you can do. If you're finding something just sitting there and you want to get a little bit of movement, you can either do it manually by doing some stereo panning and some automation, or you can just use something like a flanger or a microphaser, as we did in this case, to get that sounding a bit different. Let's come back over to Steve's vocals, shall we, and start working on these and see if there's anything else we need to do with these. So we'll come in here. And once again, thank you to Steve for being so brave and letting me use his song here, and to Steve's wife, and to anyone else who featured on this track. I think that was just you two. So we'll hit play on Steve's vocals here.
Heading for meltdown, it's easy to see. Our leader's gone crazy and he's holding the key. Gone insane, the world is crying, slowly dying.
So what we've got on here, and I was going to come in here to look at the EQ, because what I might do is, I know we've cut off some of the bass here, and I don't know if, I can't remember if I did that or if Steve did that, but let's just play with this EQ curve and see if we need to add or change any EQ that we have on this vocal for now.
Our sanity's been flushed right down the drain, where you can strike first if you dare, and then we're all gonna taste that acid rain.
So for this song, I don't normally boost sort of around here, around that 1 to 2K, but I think Mike's voice, Steve's voice actually suits this. So let's just hit play again. We'll come back to where
You
this.
can strike first if you dare, and then we're all gonna taste that acid rain.
Yeah, I think that's working. So we'll go with that for now. The other thing we've got a lot of delay on here, which is actually okay. And I think I actually told Steve that he should put some delay on there. I might just remove some of, maybe the tape delay can come off here. Let's just try this again.
World is crying, slowly dying. Our sanity's been flushed right down the drain, where you can strike first.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to do that and then just use a little more of the actual delay that we have down the bottom here, this echo down here. We'll just check what this one is. I think this is our dark quarter note. Yep, perfect. So we'll just add this in here just to get a slightly darker delay sound here. We'll play that again.
It's only roses. This world is now gone way beyond insane. The world is crying, slowly dying. Our sanity's been flushed right down the drain, where you can strike first if you dare.
Cool. So that's all coming along there, and I think that that's going to work here for the mix. And I still think the vocals sound too quiet, but that's probably me, and I'm going to leave them there because, yes, when we listen to the final mix, you'll be able to tell me, do we need to bring them up, bring them down? Because, again, the whole point of this is to help out Steve, to help out you, and then you can provide your own feedback and comments, and you can provide Steve some assistance. So it's kind of everyone helping everyone here. I think it's going to be cool. So let's come here, because this last vocal here is on a different track. So Steve's done some different changes here. We've got some different vocal effects on here. We've actually got the Rough Rider, which is a cool compressor on here, so which he's played around with from Audio Damage. That's a cool plugin. So let's take a listen to this final chorus and see what we need to do with this one.
Take the box and let him do his will. Your reckless madness, we're paying a bill. We're paying in blood and we're paying in pain. It's time to rise up, don't stop chasing the rain. We're paying in blood and we're paying in pain.
So the only changes I really made there is I wanted to really enhance and push up the makeup gain on the compressor, because I liked what Steve added there with the compressor, and I added another compressor here at the start, the stock compressor. I just pulled that down a little bit, and yes, we've over compressed it, but I think that was the point here going into this final vocal. So let's just hear the transition here between the final chorus here and this final vocal part.
You can strike first if you dare.
Coming into the final section.
Political traitors, the world's down the drain. You voted for change now, so don't you complain. Cause you take the box and let him do his will. Your reckless with madness, we're paying a bill. We're paying in blood and we're paying in pain. It's time to rise up, don't stop chasing the rain. We're paying in blood and we're paying in pain. It's time to rise up, don't stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. No, never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain.
I really like that, and I'm going to leave most of that. I love what Steve did with the synth that we have down here. It just adds something really cool to the end of this track, and I think now that we've just sort of brought those vocals up a little bit, I think that sounds cool. I did have an idea here that it's probably going to take too long, but what we could have done is split this out and put like "Never Stop Chasing the Rain" on one side, then "Never Stop Chasing the Rain." So what I might actually do is cheat a little bit and use a flanger to kind of create that effect. So if we come back to here,
Don't stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing.
so it's this part here that we want to use. So what we can do, we can split this here, split it out. Now we're going to create a duplicate of this track, tap it, duplicate it, and then we're going to drag this one down to a new track. Now at the moment it'll sound exactly the same, but what I want to do is let's just add this flange. I'm into flanging at the moment. I don't know why. I think it's cool. Once again, we can probably get rid of the effect EQ for this last section because it doesn't do a whole lot. It's just an additional EQ, and then we'll add in here. We'll grab a flanger, and we'll put the flanger here on the final vocal, and let's just solo it and dial in some settings on our flange.
Never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. No, never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain.
Again, it's pretty subtle there at the moment. I'm wondering whether we need to enhance that a little bit, make it a bit less subtle.
Never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. No, never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain.
Try it one more time.
Never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. No, never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain.
I like that. Again, it just pushes that a little bit wider and gives you a little bit more width with that final. So let's take a listen to this in the mix.
Kinda rise up, don't stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. No, never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? You think that's going to work here in the final mix?
Kinda rise up, don't stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain. No, never stop chasing the rain. Never stop chasing the rain.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Alrighty, let's come back. So what have we done here? Let's review. So we've been a little bit all over the place. We've played around a little bit with everything here, and you can see here how you can spend half an hour on a mix. You could probably spend 14 days on a mix if you wanted to. But what I wanted to do is show you what's going to give Steve the most bang for his buck here, and what might be some cool tips or things that maybe you hadn't thought of to use in GarageBand. And then I'm going to release this mix to you right in a moment. We're going to play the final mix here at the end of the video, and then what I want you to do is let us know, because I want to revisit this. So this is going to be our sort of final-ish mix, and then what I'll do is any feedback that comes in here, we'll implement some of that, and then I'm going to do a mastering video as well here, so I can show you how I would master this track as well. But let's come back here to the start of the track, because I want to hear these epic guitars here at the start again. Haven't heard them for a while now, so let's come back to the start. So here is the start of our track. We're right over here on the left, remember, to start with. Still not happy with that being on the left. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use a flanger. So once we hit that part, it's totally cool. But we need that opening guitar to be in the middle. Steve was right. We needed the opening guitar in the middle. Let's duplicate out a guitar track. No problem here. All we need to do is drag, not the whole lot, tap off, tap on, drag down, and then we need to use this one, and we'll just center the panning. We'll grab this panning, we'll center it. But you know what I'm going to add? I'm going to add a flanger. Plugins and effects, edit. We'll add in here, and we will go to a flanger, and we'll be able to. The reason I'm adding this is again to get a bit more of that stereo width, so it's not just sitting in the middle. Because the reason I wanted it on the left is I wanted to get that stereo feel, but we're going to use a flanger instead. So let's take a listen to this with our flange guitar. Yeah? And then we kick in with... I don't know. I think that's kind of rocking, just privately. Cool. So that is kind of where we're at the moment. Now, the last thing I tend to do in a mix is I'll play around with the master effects. So the master, echo, and reverb. And this is, it's a little bit of an art form. Sorry, I'm not using my mouse so you can see. what I'll normally do is dial in a little bit of the echo and the reverb onto pretty much every track. So if we just come in here, let's listen to it as it is now in like a section here where most of the instruments are playing, like so. So that's pretty cool. So what I will now do is sort of add in a little bit of this. So if we let's just like solo the drums out here. And at the moment, they're sounding pretty cool. They're pumping along. They're doing this thing. But if we add the reverb, it's just going to bring it into that space. And the same with our delay. So you don't need a lot of this, but it can just thicken up the mix and it can actually make it sound more like, you know how sometimes your instruments sound like a bunch of individual instruments? This technique brings them all into the same room. And yes, it's a virtual room that you're using reverb to create, but it still works pretty well. So let's just do this. We'll do the same with the rest of our beats again. Just add a little bit here. And if it sounds terrible, you can come back and change it. That's already got some reverb. We'll leave that one as it is. Bass doesn't need it. Vocals have already been taken care of, I'm pretty sure. Yep, Steve's already done this with the vocals. They're all cool. Yep. Guitars, I've already got a bit on there. So I think we've actually already done this as we've been going along, adding that little bit of delay and reverb to bring everything in. Let's just add it to a little bit to our synth. Maybe we don't need it on the synth, but I'm just going to add it anyway, just to bring it in the space. And the same here. So now, if we come back in here and we play now. I like it. Let's come in here. We'll take a quick listen to the bridge of what we've done with this bridge sound now. Yeah, and you can hear there we've got that delay going on. We might even have a little bit more of the delay in there just to give it a little bit of a more unique sound. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Like I like the flange on there, just gives it a bit of that warbly kind of feel to the vocal. And then, yeah, just with Steve's vocals underneath it. And remember, we did this little delay trick with Steve's vocals so that they were doing this.
We're chasing.
So it's sitting out there, right? So yeah, we've played a lot with the stereo field, and I think, fingers crossed, we've actually helped the track here, made it really, really pop. But you can be the judge because we want your feedback. So yes, again, massive thank you to Steve. He's been a great supporter of the channel here. He's one of my patrons, as I said, over at Patreon. And yeah, when I got this track, I'm like, yes, I really want to do this. I want to use this as a mix opportunity to try and help folks out. And now it's your turn. So listen to this mix. Let us know what it needs. That's your job from here. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you
dying now, but what the hell for? Chase